So, Guru Nation, I'm bringing you Brittany Sloan. Yesterday, her and I had like off. Obviously, it wasn't recorded, or you would have seen it. Um, we had a good conversation about her organization, her passion for diversity. Black Research Matters is her group. She's going to tell you more about it. At the end of this interview, we're going to have 10 more minutes exclusive content just for Latinos in Clinical Research channel, where we're going to talk more about similarities between what LICR is trying to do and what Black Research Matters is trying to do. So make sure you go there. All ethnicities welcome, all backgrounds, doesn't matter. It's just more content. But for Guru Nation, it's always nice to showcase people doing like ambitious things in this industry. Brittany, welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
And you guys probably know Ashley Margot, but if not, she's the co-host today. And we're going to be asking Brittany a lot of questions about her career, um, and really like share her story of why she decided to start an organization like Black Research Matters. Because it's not like you just wake up one day and say, "Hey, I'm going to start an organization," like out of thin air. So
Right.
let's get into your career a little bit first, Brittany. Like, how did you get into clinical research?
So it was a stumble for me. And it was a good stumble. Into around the time of the recession. So 20 I'll say 2007.
Mm,
I couldn't go back to college. I had a debt against my account. My parents couldn't pay for it. My dad lost his job, and I had to get a big girl job. I couldn't do work study anymore. And I had a biology background, and I had one more semester left to graduate, but obviously I didn't have this degree that's always required for these positions. So I was able to finagle a clinical research position part time at UNC. And I ended up, I think how a number of people stumble into the field, I ended up being really good at it, understanding the basis of how research ran. I was excited to read the protocols, follow them. I'm like typical research person. I'm a type A personality, OCD a little bit. And this was just right up my alley. I was a biology major, but not really quite sure what I wanted to do with that. Like, did I want to do bench lab work? Did I want to go and be a doctor, which I was pretty sure I didn't want to do that? Did I want to do medicine? I was pretty sure. Did I want to go into a softer science? But stumbling upon this was probably the greatest thing that happened for me because I found this niche of a place that was just ideal and perfect. And then it branched off from there. And so then I went to, of course, the rival Duke and worked over there for a while and did
wait, hold
data
on, hold on, hold
management.
on, hold on, hold on. Wait. Okay, how did you stumble into it? Because a lot of people are watching right now, and they're not gonna stumble, right? Because now it's intentional. Like we put it out there in the universe on the internet. This is the beautiful thing about this. If you're watching this and you don't have research experience, you're not gonna stumble into it anymore because now you have awareness. So how could they purposely stumble into it and you accidentally,
Yeah.
right?
And that's a good point because those of us who are generally, I feel like, brown, add female, add anything onto that, and my age, 37, in the early 2000s, you were stumbling into it. Nobody was, there wasn't much of a network, and there wasn't much of a way for those who looked like me to be able to promote me into a space, into the space, onto the table, in the arena. So thank you for making me take a step back because
Yeah, we gotta
this
slow it down
generation
because
and
you're
this
already.
world is different. Like that's not going to be the struggle necessarily that they're going to have, the one that maybe some of us had who are older. So when I say I stumbled, I literally found this position on Craigslist.
Wow. So what were you
And
doing?
I
Like
just,
you were just on Craigslist one day, like just searching jobs,
yeah.
gigs,
Yeah.
and
Before that, I worked at LabCorp. I had always had little, research related positions, like adjacent, right? Like chem lab jobs, or I worked for North Carolina DOT when I was in college. But I needed a position that actually paid real money, not an internship, not a co op, not something that was associated with the college, because I wasn't at that time associated with my school because of this debt that I had. So yeah, I mean, I fought tooth and nail, blood, sweat, and tears, waited a long time, tried to file unemployment, and just kept fighting until I found the position. And in some regard, I feel like there's still that. Maybe not now, but I still, like, within the last 5 years, I still have felt that. In the last 7 years, I've still felt where, like, if you, when I moved from North Carolina to San Diego, the part where I didn't know anybody, I had no network. I really was out there cold calling, cold emailing, trying to find a position. And so that's what I mean when I talk about the stumble into it. That I think for me, even though I got into the field, if you go into a totally different area, sometimes I still feel the struggle of maybe like breaking into the industry in that regional area.
I'm glad we broke it down because, I mean, in many respects, it's a little bit easier maybe to get in because of the, YouTube and organizations like yours, organizations like ours, YouTube channels, different content creators. I mean, it's 2022 is a different world than 2007, but in many
Absolutely.
respects, and I'm guessing this is one of the reasons you started Black Research Matters. It's definitely one of the reasons we started Latinos in Clinical Research.
Mhm.
Much still hasn't changed, right? We were talking a little bit about this
Right.
yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But to say for Black Research Matters, that came later, around, the idea was around 2016, and it was my frustration with my company's leadership and the third parties that we were working with. So thank you for giving me that credit. But it wasn't until maybe like 5 or so years ago the thought popped into my head. Now, I'm not I'm an evolving extrovert. I used to love to be on the scene, and now I like to be in the back. And so, as I was thinking of this concept, this space, well, first, let me take a step back. So, let's talk about Black Research Matters real quick. Black Research Matters is a safe space free of criticism and judgment for Black people specifically to learn more about research with the purposes of strengthening the community by the individual becoming a better informed decision maker in the future. So that's a mouthful, but the purpose of all of that, creating this safe space, was so intentional a response from what I was noticing within the field of 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 recruitment and just general awareness of what a demographic or a cultural group outside of general white American would look like, and how do you encourage these populations to have discussions about around research, thus encouraging participation. There wasn't that. There was just recruitment material that had a Black person on it, or recruitment material that had an Asian person on it, and it was just giving the same information, not even understanding that there's we're talking about equity here. Like, there's a lack of connection and resources for people of color generally to even understand what an MRI is and why we're doing one for testing, and for $20 I'm supposed to take my day off to go up there. Like, the purpose wasn't necessarily driven home to our demographics, and nobody cared. Honestly, nobody cared.
That's
Nobody
the
cared.
worst part. That's the worst part. Nobody cared. Let's come back to that. But okay, sorry I interrupted you before about Duke. So let's continue with Duke.
So I go on to Duke, yes, and I do data management there for prostate cancer. When I was at UNC prior to Duke, it was breast cancer. And then went on to Duke and did data management and prostate, and then moved on to another Duke position and did head, neck, and throat cancers, lung cancers
Wow.
as well. Was a research coordinator in that position. And then from there moved to another Duke position, but I did animal research, business management. I ran the office. If anybody's familiar with the Eye of Cook, it's the animal research world.
You
And
are a
then
generalist.
Yeah.
You're a
I
generalist.
am.
So why
This
you're
is
also very
awesome.
organized. I can see it. Like, you're getting all these, you've seen all the loopholes and you just kind of like come in and figure them out. Yeah, I totally vibe
Point
with
in
you.
my career, absolutely, I can say that. But at the time, I was like, where are we going? Like, why? What are we doing? Like, to myself, Brittany, what are we doing here? Like, all these are all connected, yes. But like, how is this really going to benefit me? And I'm happy to be here in this position. But so then from that Duke position in the animal research role, I moved out to San Diego and took a position with UCSD, University of California, San Diego. And then that transitioned over to a role, my colleagues and I, to USC. We were still in San Diego, but our academic affiliation was USC. And in that role, I was a regulatory affairs specialist. So then I moved over into regulatory, a position I hadn't been in yet. Did that for 7 years, like I said. And then in January, I got bit by whatever that millennial great resignation bug was, and I quit my job and I moved back to North Carolina, and now I live in Charlotte, and I am in the process of going back to work and working on Black Research Matters in the meantime.
That's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
So your background, the fact that you've done so many things is gonna like you've already been a mentor, I'm guessing, to so many, and we're gonna get into Black Research Matters too, like some of the specifics. But I think that's such a powerful asset that you have. You've done coordinating, you've done data management, you've done regulatory affairs, you've done animal studies, you've done business, you've done basically almost
Every
everything there is
yeah.
in this industry. So if somebody approaches you like from a different angle, you have the right context
Hmm.
to give them
Right,
appropriate advice, which I think is like
right,
severely lacking in this industry, is like an industry of special hyper specialization. And
yeah,
to find a generalist, I tell people all the time on my channel, like, try to become a generalist. Nobody wants to hire a generalist, but everybody wants somebody who knows how to do something at a certain period of time. So
right. The
you're always going to be
crossover,
in demand.
absolutely.
Especially, I think
Yeah,
to add to what Dan said is that nowadays you have this selling point where everybody's a specialist, everybody knows, and everybody this, everybody that. But really, it's about finding those individuals, like you say, on the background. And I can definitely feel you on that because I was always in organizations growing up and very extroverted, and I've told Dan this multiple times, like in the background, that since all this has happened, I find myself much more fun, having fun, being in the backgrounds, creating, finding the purpose, and
mm-hmm.
formulating, right? And so I think right now one of the biggest issues is that there's so many, I'm not gonna say false advertisers out there, but it's just they don't have the background that people really need, you know?
Yeah,
It's important that somebody comes in with actual, face to facts of what they can provide, right? And so when Dan, spoke to me about you and I looked you up on LinkedIn, I was just like, oh my God, you have so much to offer. And then we're hearing your story, really, as Dan was saying, generalization about the work and overall scope. That's major because you can see and be the living testament to how somebody can transition easily, how can they can maneuver based off of their skill set, and really I
right.
think ultimately that's what people need. They need to have confidence in whoever's helping them, but it's also to showcase that it is possible, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah.
And Google is a great tool. I know people refer and highlight and shout out the internet all the time, but as people are trying to build their resume out, there are so many tools, like Dan said, maybe in the early 2000s. I mean, piggybacking off of what Dan said, I'm saying maybe in the early 2000s, there wasn't much of that. But you can literally put in like clinical research, CV template, something along those lines to get an idea of what you need to do, or also being spoon fed. And I'm saying that because I've been spoon fed over the summer as I update my CV. And it's a lot more. The information is a lot more accessible. I wouldn't say easy, but it's a lot more accessible to get to, in hopes that it'll turn it into a career for somebody. Pro tip.
People are more spoiled now because they have like everything handed to them. But it's almost like, in a way, it could be more confusing also. One of the things that turns people off are job postings. Like, I know because I'm on TikTok, like answering comments. People think that only the jobs they see being posted are what's being hired. And I always tell them, like, research sites, small ones like mine, we don't post. Doesn't mean we're not hiring. somebody walked in and reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I see the UMA clinical trials. Like, how can I help?" People need to do more networking and not just rely on, oh, well, on this job posting, it said 2 years of experience and I only have 1 year and a half. So I'm not even going to apply. I get that
Yeah.
attitude so often. And I wanted to expand on what you said earlier about it seems like people don't care, especially when it comes to minorities getting careers in this industry. I don't know how that is still the case. Literally every week there's a conference or a seminar or a Zoom. We had one earlier with Ashley, with a major CRO on this topic. So there's at least there's a perception of effort. But when you talk to people in the know, like you're saying no, people don't care. So
Well,
how is this possible?
I actually meant people in the field of clinical research don't care about expanding recruitment and retention outside of like the effort of just changing the face on the recruitment materials. But and also, Dan, you are correct in that uh, one of the reasons why this is happening is that we have a lack of representation in the field in general. And if people of color saw people who look like them of all shades and spoke the languages and talked with the funk and all the stuff, that they would be more comfortable to participate because somebody was there like them. The same thing with Obama, the Obama effect of him being president. So to your point, even more so, that is a problem. And to say it as plainly as possible without being PC, yes, they know that it's a problem. I'm saying they, all the powers that be, we'll put them all in one four-letter word. They know it's a problem. They've created this DEI initiative, and nobody's holding anybody accountable of what that actually looks like. Okay, they came out with these DEI initiatives. If you ask me personally, around the time of George Floyd and his passing, and that was well and good. And I hope a lot of us were paying attention to what they said their talking points were going to be. You know what I mean? Because 2 years post, this is when you look at them and you say to them, you said that you were going to elevate the platform on X, Y, and Z. How are you doing that? How are you measuring, and where are you at now? Where are you at now? You know what I mean? And like, so I think the thing is that like, not that we wanted to, there was just a lot going on at the time, okay, because COVID. We heard that they had these DEI missions, and now 2 years later, I think it's fair for us to begin to ask, like, what does that look like? What data results, what data points have you created? You know, because I think what we're going to see, as we've been seeing it play out, is that it's a bunch of lip service,
Yeah, it's a bunch of rhetoric. I
unfortunately.
mean, my
Yeah, it is.
question was really like more rhetorical in the sense that like how is it possible on the one hand there's this rhetoric, like you said, since basically 2020 that we want change in all these initiatives, and on the other hand, we're not seeing similar results despite more running on the same hamster wheel,
Yeah. Well, my friend, I mean, this is a conversation that really comes down to the racism that is in research. And if we're not going to have that honest conversation, then it's just going to be tense like this forever.
Let's do
I mean,
it.
that's the
Let's do it.
realness. That's the realness of it, you know? Like, the reason they're uncomfortable is because, and I'm saying I'm biracial. My mom is white and my dad is black. So I've had these tense conversations often. And the reason they're uncomfortable is because a couple of things. I think a lot of people, I'm talking about in this field, there's going to be like a lot of older white people, generally older white men. I think generally they feel like maybe guilt or shame associated with it, but also a lot of anger and rage and displacement of that, and not really quite sure where to put it. And like giving it's a concession in a way for some reason to give up this power. It's a power dynamic, now that I've said it out loud. And so we say that there's a problem, and I'm saying this from experience. Brad was on this
Love that guy.
platform with me over.
That's
Yes,
how I
shout
found
out to
out
Brad
about you.
Hightower.
That's how I found out
Yeah,
about you
thank
from his
you.
podcast.
I mean, yeah, I'm glad you said that. He's a great guy. Shout out to Note to File podcast. But over the summer we were on this Clubhouse meeting that was to discuss how to break down. It was a coalition that was created with the intention of addressing DEI in research. I'm not really quite sure with clinical trialists, or was it on the participant side? And let's say just both. I was invited to speak on behalf of Black Research Matters, and I ended up having to go first. I had never been in this space before, and the question that day was about something to the regards of, let's talk about justice. How do we identify that in research? How do we quantify it? How do we deal with it? And how do we fix it, get it going, or whatever? And basically my positioning was, if we're not going to talk about the racism in research, and we're not going to talk about those issues, then we can't talk about justice. We can't talk about justice until we talk about injustice. Like, where in the hell did that even come from for us to even have to discuss a dialogue about justice? Obviously something happened, right? So like, we should start where the problem was. And they did not like that. They did not like that. The whole group and the whole panel did not like what I had to say. I was quoted as boiling the ocean, making it hot for no reason,
Mhm.
bringing in issues that aren't related. And he clarified and asked that he was asking for more of like a technical perspective, like how in clinical research. And I'm like, but that's still the answer, Like, I've been in the field for a minute. I'm a Black woman. I'm Black. I'm a woman. I'm in research. Like, I have the perspective to say that we have to talk about the real conversation is this really touchy, uncomfortable thing that we don't want to discuss in this country.
Mhm. That's that's insane, honestly. I mean, part of the reason why I really love like our platform, right, is because of the fact that, you uh, can't, and that's what so I'm in research, but I've also been in the clinical field. It's almost completely the same. And it's kind of a thing where it's just, we can talk about it, but surface talk. Let's, pillow talk it, or however you want to put
Right.
it. And it's annoying because, again, the conversations won't be had. So here, I love that we can bring up the very uncomfortable topics. Like I've been in uncomfortable topics. I'm full Latina, but I look Caucasian. So some would say I would have, the benefit of looking full Caucasian, right? So I've had those
Right.
uncomfortable conversations and things like that. And it's good to have them because you have a different perspective on like where people are coming from and how you play into all of that. And so one thing that I personally feel, where I come from, a long line of very strong single women in my family,
Mm-hmm.
and I was always taught, you pretty much you make the path for yourself. And so growing up, I've always kind of been in those types of roles, like said organizations and things like that. So when Dan came to us about LICR, it was very much like, well, we created the organization, but when we started reaching out to these organizations, we started seeing that there really wasn't much communication. It was dragged on communication. It was like, let's have introductions so we can save face. But
Mm-hmm.
months later, where are we at? There's nothing happening. And that's how we came up with the university and clinical research, because we said, okay, well, if there's an issue of hiring this and that, well, let's create the solution. And then that solution brought upon other solutions. So now we have this scenario where we almost have a full 360 solution to so many things. And when we bring it up to them, it's like, all right, here, you don't want to have the conversations. All right, cool, that's fine. But now here's your solution. You always say, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to come across? Well, now there's an actual solution. And now it's partially controlled by a very diverse background of people, right? We can actually have a say on the future movement forward, as opposed to, okay, if they don't want to have the dialogue, I mean, whatever. It's just, let's move forward. And even then, it's still so hard. There's so much red tape, and it's ridiculous. I That's something that I personally get upset about and I struggle about. This is a conversation can keep going on, and when we have these conversations with the organization separately, I get very heated in the topics
Yeah.
because it's it's dumb. It's really dumb, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that openly in an actual clubhouse recording. That's insane.
Yeah,
That's okay. I
Clubhouse
took it
meant to
like a
be.
G. I took it like a G.
You're
You
like,
can
I'm
ask
good. I'm good.
Brad. I took it fine. I took it just I was hot, but
So was that
yeah,
Clubhouse
and
before or after you started Black Research Matter?
There's something I did want to ask, Brittany. When exactly did you start it? Because I know you said it was an
December of
idea.
2019. Yeah, I mean, it took a while to come. No, it didn't take
Fruition.
a while for me to come to me. It took a while for me to act upon it, because I kept saying to myself, there's somebody out here who has an organization like this. Like I'm stupid to think that I'm the only person in the US in this land of like polar racist opposites always occurring no matter where you are in USA. Like somebody came up with an organization where Black people can talk about research and learn some stuff with the purposes. And what's really important to me about Black Research Matters is that I'm not here telling people to go vote or to go do X, Y, and Z or to participate in research. My job is just to give you the information for us to talk about it. And I trust that you are smart enough to make your own decisions so that and when you are approached to participate in research, whether just on the street, it's a survey, or you were at the ER, or you went to a doctor's appointment and some cute little thing is coming up like, do you want to participate in this little research and got blood work and can give you a coupon? You know what you're getting yourself into. You know the questions to ask, and the consent form doesn't look crazy
Yeah.
unusual to you, you know, and you're okay with these words and the terms, or you feel confident to and comfortable to ask questions. I think a lot of times with not just with Black people, but with minorities, because we don't have access to resources and because we're always on the go. I think of it as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If y'all have ever seen that, the bottom is like your most essential needs, and they go up from there. And the top is like something like self-actualization. Most people who are minorities don't live much past this bottom level where we have to get our essential needs. So we don't have much of the opportunity to have these conversations and to sit here and dialogue about this stuff. So then that goes into our lack of participation, whether historically we find out things from like the ski study or other studies that have been conducted by U.S. scientists or doctors or medical professionals that were in our harm, or just not having access to materials and services to even be turned on to stuff like that. So I think that was my long answer to say I'm just here to provide the information, to give the information so people can discern for themselves how would you, when and if you are presented with research, how will you move forward? And also, let's start to have this conversation in the house. You know, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, Easter, those are big holidays for Black people. And we're talking about a lot of stuff. And I'm so glad that we're finally talking to each other about like healthcare, like going to the doctor and stuff like that. And I'm looking forward to expanding that out into what that looks like in terms of like research participation, feeling comfortable, feeling confident. Because when you're a minority in this country, like you said, you have to feel confident to blaze your own trail, like you said, to do your thing, to do your thing. And to feel comfortable in that, even though you don't have a PhD or you're not familiar with it, you have to come off with that confidence. And so for Black Research Matters, that's the space that I want to have for people, Black people, to feel confident to ask the questions that they need to ask. Let's talk about biorepository. Okay, let's talk about what that term means. Let's talk about what it means to keep your data indefinitely. What does that look like? Where is it at? If you don't want to be in the trial anymore, who do you contact? What does that really mean? What does it really mean when they tell you, you can take this home, this consent, you can take this home and you can talk about that? Understanding and doubling down triple times over that participants at any time can tap out. Like at any time you don't want to do this and you don't like being here and you don't like the question that they ask, you can say, I want to leave right now. You do not have to stay. You know, these essential things that people need to know and understand and hear when it comes to participating in research, primarily because of what has been done to us historically in the past.
Yeah, being very subservient. I know that for Latinos, it's a lot of it is like, respect. So you stay quiet and you listen
Right.
and yeah, just insane. But one of the things that you just mentioned about your organization that I love is that you're here to just provide the resources, and that's really what the basis of LICR is as well. We want to provide and give. Like that's really all we're doing is just
Yeah.
giving. We're not, taking or anything like that. It's for the sake of understanding that where we all came from, and like that me, Judy, and Monica are Latina, Dan is Romanian, and Chris is Caucasian. We and our ambassadors, we're bringing on more. We want have a large, wide variety of representation. Latinos in clinical research, we are focused primarily, excuse me, primarily, sorry, on Latinos because of the language barrier, right? And there was nothing there, and even that goes even further than that because there's many language barriers that are obviously all over, right? When it comes to research, but we are open to all ethnicities, and we do have a lot of Afro Latinos as well as some African Americans in our group, and I think it would be very great to be able to, at some times, if you are open, to having, open dialogue conversation, right? Because we are two different, culture backgrounds, right? And how the perspective comes together. So I think that that would actually be really great. So our members can also, cross over as well to your organization because it may be just
Yeah.
as helpful, if not more. So
Yeah. A lot of shared experiences here for sure. A
yeah,
lot of them.
100%. And so we really appreciate what you're doing. I really love, what the foundation of your organization is based on because really,
Thank you.
yeah, because, ultimately we can ascend as high as we want, right? Because of the connections we have and the experience we have. But we don't want to do that. What do they call the crab in the bucket effect, right? We want to make sure we're going
Hmm.
back and pulling somebody out as opposed to allowing them to get pulled back in. And so in order to do that, we really have to be there for our community and shed light on what's out there because it's the only way to bring more people in, right? So I really appreciate you sharing everything about your organization.
Yeah, and
Thank you. Thank you.
before we go, like 10 minutes extended session on our Latinos in Clinical Research channel, Brittany, just for Guru Nation in general. As a generalist, somebody watching right now saying, "Wow, this I'm so glad like I'm on this channel and let me get some advice from Brittany on how do I enter clinical research? Like I have no experience, maybe my confidence is not very high, like you were saying. So what are some things they can do right now to improve their chances?"
Yeah, I am I think that that's always to this person. That is always the evolution of a person in clinical research is always the case. So fear not. I and others like me who are out here looking for a position who have been in the field for 15, 16 years, you still have to mold yourself with the times. So what the ask is even without somebody having experience in the field, look at the job description and figure out what skills you already have or you think you're good at, and highlighting those either in the cover letter or getting yourself prepared for the interview or just for self-confidence purposes. Sometimes I look at job descriptions and maybe I don't apply, but like in my mind I'm practicing what that would look like. They want something that's just outside of my realm. They want a 15-year PhD. I'm like, well, I mean, no, but like I'm analytical and I can, disseminate. Like I'm trying to think of things, and I'm a far shot. No, don't hire me for that. But getting in the practice of always highlighting and embracing your abilities,
Hmm.
and that'll make you feel more comfortable in these interview spaces. As somebody who hates fears interviews and public speaking and stuff like that, it gets you more comfortable and familiar with like who you are and selling that. I hate interviews because they get in there and they're like, so tell me about yourself quickly. And you have to
Quickly.
say the greatest stuff about yourself as fast as possible so you can get this job. And we don't need money. So I think it's for somebody getting into the field. I think fear not, because even though those of us who are in the field, it may look as if we're going about things just fine, but I think all of us know when it comes time to look for a new position, you have to zhuzh up your resume. You have to change the wording depending on the company or the academic institution. Some things have to go and some things have to change, and it's just that, like reevaluating your resume, using different words. Google is so great right now for that, because I just updated my CV and using a thesaurus, changing certain words that HR systems are going to catch quicker than you using coordinated. Maybe you navigated, you know what I mean? So those things matter, and I think as people play around with their CVs and their resumes, you feel more confident in your work because you actually have this place where you can display all of that, and you just highlighted yourself. And now look at you, like, an hour or two later, now you're a clinical research professional on paper, or now you can present that way, or now you can begin to feel confident in that space because you've taken these office management skills and found a way to bring them into research admin. You know what I mean? Like having the ability to, I guess, filing and general organization that can be useful in TMF.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think if one wants to get into the field, and you're new, or it's a crossover experience where you're coming from somewhere else, you'll have to be very patient with yourself. Dan, you and I talked about this yesterday, how difficult it is to get into the field, first of all. And and so there's that. So bravo for somebody for wanting to get in. So be patient and keep looking over your resume and getting comfortable with what it feels like to explain who you are and explain how you're going to be valuable to the organization.
And now and you
Uh,
sound exactly like the advice from Ashley Margot, but now we can add networking, right? Black
okay,
Research Matters,
networking.
Latinos in clinical research.
Absolutely.
And we will send over, I mean, we at the academy, we come across many students that, are looking for organizations, and even more so because they're already going through their own financial struggle, right? Because we've all been there. So I will definitely, as I get my clients and my students, I will definitely be sending them over to you, as I know that you guys are free, and it's going to be a great opportunity. So I'm very happy that came across you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
me
so much.
too. And
Same.
Brittany, thank you so much. Stay on, both of you guys, 10 more minutes. We'll do extended for Latinos in Clinical Research YouTube channel. If you're watching on my channel, just go to Latinos in Clinical Research, watch the 10 minutes. We're going to go a little more in depth inside baseball of the two organizations, similarities, shared values, things like that. But Brittany, thank you so much for coming on. Brittany's LinkedIn is underneath this video. And if you're listening, all right, in the show notes, same with Ashley Margot right here. Ashley. So links in the show notes. Thank you very much. Like, subscribe, comment, share, and more content. Latinos in Clinical Research. All right. So welcome back, Latinos in Clinical Research. You get the extended version with Brittany. You've seen the entire interview so far. No need for reintroduction. But we wanted to dive more into like the issues, not necessarily issues, but let's just talk about how you've been growing your organization and how we are, and really what our common challenges and opportunities might be going forward as two separate organizations, but ones that are looking to collaborate together.
Yeah. And with similar goals too. Like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of overlap in any minority organization generally in this country because of what we all are facing in this country. And so I think that it'll be easy for us, well, not easy, but I think the work is clear. We'll say that. And what was your other question? I'm sorry. I forgot.
Similar, like how we're growing, how we plan to grow the organizations. I mean, you have like certain strategies. We're always experimenting, and we can kind of do it publicly because it'll get people interested in reaching out. Like, how are you currently? Was it a Facebook group basically that people can
Yeah,
join?
it is, and it's in a limited space right now. I've personally been going through a lot this year, but as it stands, it's still a Facebook group, and hopefully, the goal is to expand. Dan, you and I talked about this, and to bring other people into the conversation. Black Research Matters. It's very important for me to keep that as exclusive to Black people as possible, because I am testing out my own hypothesis here, in that I believe when you give people a safe space, and I'm saying, let me start off taking a step back. I joined a run group a couple of years ago, and then this run group was specifically for Black women runners. I mean, everybody was welcome, right? It wasn't as exclusive as Black Research Matters is, but it was a space where Black women could come together and they could run. And what I found was that we were dialoguing and having conversations about just our life in a way that we maybe couldn't and didn't feel comfortable to in other spaces. I also feel like the run world is pretty elite and white, and so this was a break from that. Now, then I became the president of this chapter for a couple of years, and what I noticed that a lot of women were coming to me and saying, "Oh my God, thank you so much for giving me these 45 minutes to just be me and like speak freely and talk comfortably. And I don't know a damn thing about running, but I only come on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. because I get the opportunity to be me without having to like put on for anything. Like not the hat of mom or wife or Black woman working or woman or anything like that. I am just who I am. And as I watch this expand, this opportunity expand, where women who really did not want to run, okay, but they were so happy to have this community evolve, they became runners, and they ran half marathons when these women said they were never going to run more than a mile. And just boom, it just went so easy like that, at the same time that I was struggling with the colleagues and the upper management and leadership not doing anything. So having a, a space significant, clearly marked and designated for Black people, I think initially I felt uncomfortable about that, because I didn't think it was going to get much love. And I felt like, generally, if I can just say it plainly, white people were going to be like, that's reverse racism to not let me in. But when I think about it, like, so this is why the problem still continues, because we don't have a space where we can just talk comfortably. I think since we're all minorities here, what happens is you're kikiing and you're kicking it with your friends and having a good time who are either like-minded or culturally of the same. And then somebody or something different, or, you know, maybe another colleague of a different race comes by, and let's say sometimes white, and then you switch it up. You switch up how you're talking because you want to make it comfortable for them or something like that. But then it gets tense, right? And then we're not talking the same, and then we're not asking the same questions, and it doesn't feel like it's a place of openness. You know what I mean? It feels like it's a place of a great deal of mindfulness, and more so on the more melanated people to have to code switch to make sure it's all inclusive and everything. And I think, and I love inclusivity, but when we're talking about trying to save my people, now is not the time to think that having a conversation with all of us in one room is gonna permeate the people I need for it to hit. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, I feel very strongly that it needs to be a closed, safe space. And for however long I need to protect that, and however long I can protect this environment, that is my goal. And I think that one of the strategies here that's maybe a new age one is creating inclusivity for the purposes of recognizing like the equitable aspect that we need here, which is we need to have private conversations within our own people to talk about what the hell is going on. You know what I mean? Like, too many Black people, too many people of color are dying from things that they don't need to be dying from, just generally. You know what I mean? Like, a 45-year-old overweight person should not be dying of, COPD or heart failure or kidney disease or something along those lines. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of psychological conversation that has to be had for a lot of the reasons. And I think one of the reasons that we're not seeing much of a change is because of the white coat syndrome, of the struggle of even getting to the doctor, the time off, back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs that I was talking about. If you have a job where you can't leave and you work, a position where your boss is not going to give you the time off, and you don't work remote, then where do you have the time to go to the doctor or to seek out resources or to do anything, much less participate in the research or even give a shit? I'm sorry, I don't even know if I can say that, but like to care, to even have the ability to even go there to have that conversation. So if we're trying to meet our people where we're at, then we need to do just that and just have the small space where we can just openly talk, not anything more than that. As we are here to serve the people, I'm saying we, you and I, as we're all here to serve the people, I think it's helpful when we just sit back and see what happens when the people talk to us. And then that's what we should take from that. And so with Black Research Matters, I don't want it to be too much more than just the safe space. Mm-hmm. Let's talk, and then you tell me what you're looking forward to hearing more about. You know what I mean? How can I serve you? And we've talked a little bit about this, talked around it, but I think it's worth having a little bit of dialogue about. And Dan, you and I talked about it yesterday, that I don't think in a position like this, when we're here to give information to people who need it, that it makes sense to charge anybody for anything. If I'm trying to enhance the community and make my people stronger and better and more confident, informed decision makers in the future, then who am I to sit here and put a price tag on the information that I'm giving you? That's part of the problem now, why we don't have access to the things that we need, because it comes with a price tag, or it's on the other side of town, which that 100%. Comes with a price tag. So
100%.
Yeah, we have
your
similar,
question, Dan.
Similar philosophies.
Just like had me all heated up while you're saying all these things, because it's just
information's a commodity. I mean, one can argue, okay, you're paying for access maybe, but even that, you know,
Isn't really full access
I
either.
yeah, I feel like
Yeah, no.
if there's gatekeeping involved, you just become like as big as you're gonna get. You know,
Yeah.
you're actually becoming more of like what you don't want in our industry, you
Right.
know, which
And the
is a
people
safe
know
space.
that.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Our people will pick up on that quickly because we've always been solicited to. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And when you cross, when one who is that race crosses over to the other side, you can sniff that out too. So how am I even reputable to my not reputable, but how am I even like what's the word? Like validated by my own people if I'm out here charging my people for the information that I say I want to give to them. You know what I mean? Like I have this organization that I want to give to. This is my goal and my mission, but yet like, you know, gold level is $59.99. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean it's I mean to hit on all the things that you just said, it's you have to give free content. I mean you have to. There's so much, there's an abundance everywhere. I mean, if you want to get like philosophical a little bit, but there's abundance of everything, right? There's no need to be
Absolutely.
hoarding content or information or anything like that. Obviously, like on our end, right, with when we grew Latinos in clinical research, when we all came together, we didn't realize how big it would get, right, and how fast it could
Mm,
become big. But second, we understood that because it was free, it was going to be difficult. It was going to be tough. You know, we all have full busy lives, but because of what we've our like on our own experience, we understand the importance of having this content. And it's something that I've always told Dan, and I know Dan's always preached about this, but first should always be to give, like regardless, right? It should
absolutely.
always be to give first because everything comes after that. Like it's just a known fact, or at least in my experience, right? And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, speaking about what you're talking about, you need a safe space. Like I think that that's amazing. That story you're talking about, the runners group, I think that is exceptional. Honestly, I've never heard anything like that before, and it's pretty awesome. Um, I feel like it is important to have your own exclusive groups. I do think that that is extremely important. And one of the things that we actually tried to promote in the beginning, but didn't really happen too much, we wanted to use LICR kind of as an off branch. So where we have, all the we help with all the creation of like the emails and all these things like that, so that like if you said if we had somebody that wanted to do Asians in clinical research, right? We would create these like subgroups so that everybody could feel like they
Little
have their
chapters.
chapters, you know what I mean? So that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but that didn't happen, which is, whatever. But
Not yet.
yeah, not yet, right? Not yet. But ultimately, we do understand the importance of having a safe group. And one thing I would like to say about like creating openness on the conversation. One thing I have noticed, I'm sure you can agree to this, Dan, is that whenever we're having these organizations, whether they're vendors, whatever, everybody wants an agenda, like a layout of conversation. They want pre-questions. And no matter how much we tell them sometimes, like, no, we have open dialogue. Like, we're not going to pre-create this. Like, this is going to be, if we have questions for you, if the audience has questions for you and they're honest questions, like, you need to answer them. The whole point about
Right.
you getting access to this platform, it's not because you're going to have the opportunity to show face and a certain facade of something. This is a
Right.
place for you to say, hey, if you're coming in for diversity and inclusion and actually to gain access to this community, you better come with your game and it better be sincere, right? Because like you said, you can sniff it out super fast. And so,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's one thing I love about the platform. And I'm assuming that, for your organization, you do the same. Open conversation is extremely important. If anything, it creates the relationship between you and your members, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
extremely
and it
important.
has to be that way because of the purpose of the work that we're doing. You know, we're here doing this work because we're promoting healing and growth through knowledge. You know what I mean? Like we wouldn't be here if something bad didn't already have happened that is preventing people from going to get services.
Hmm.
And so it is our job, our responsibility to provide that and make it accessible and to give, like you said that Dan said, to just give it
Yeah.
without question. And I think about what you're saying about that concern of the free aspect, and I don't fear that anymore with Black Research Matters. One of the greatest things that happened in George Floyd's death was that it was eye opening for America generally, and there was like some sort of not reckoning. We're not there yet, but grace that was seen and given and understood at that time, and getting access to funds uh, and sponsorships and partnerships, as you know, it's not as difficult as I think we thought it was. Though in the beginning, it is quite fearful to have this dream and know it is more than a passion project. Like this is the right thing. This is the morally right thing to do. But knowing that, not knowing, but at least for me, let me not project for y'all. There's this fear that the field, clinical research field, won't support it, elevate it, promote it, and validate it. And it took me a long time. So you remember I told you like the thought was 2016, and then the motion was 2019, and then here we are in 2022, and I'm still pretty grassroots, but getting going. I think what happened in that evolutionary time is that I stopped caring about wanting to go to their table. Like I was like, fuck it, and I'm going to create my own table because this isn't for them in the first place. You know what I mean? Like this is for my people. This is for Black people so that they can navigate the system. This is not for clinical research professionals to learn how to make recruitment material better. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And to
I
get
love
tips and
that.
tricks
Yeah.
off of
I
like
actually
what I'm teaching
saw
my people.
I saw E.T. the hip hop preacher today on TikTok say the same thing. He said, "We're here building our own table." I love that, dude.
Yeah,
And it's true. Like if you talk about, I mean, everyone throws around equity, and it's like the truest form of equity is like, at least in our capitalistic society, which runs the world, is ownership of a business of some sort, right? Like
Right,
100%.
if we
right.
teach people to be financially sustaining, that's how we elevate, not
Yeah,
creating the system of being dependent.
exactly. Like
Mm-hmm.
to add to that, like today, one of our the CRO that we spoke to, I started off with the statistics, at least for Latinos, right? The statistics of
Mm-hmm.
the, oppression we have on the US as a whole, and then breaking that down into sectors and all that stuff. And then ultimately saying, like, all right, well, we created this, you need this. So we open our
Mm-hmm.
arms to invite you in, right? You don't say, like, oh, well, this or this or that, but it's like, hey, we're open, come in, sit at our table, let's
Right.
have a conversation, let's collaborate together, but you have to come to us. Because if this is
Mm-hmm.
what you need, obviously these other organizations, like I don't mind saying it, ACRP, SOCRA, and all of them, they're there, they're useful, right? They're very useful, but obviously, there's I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but
No, they're
you
gonna
know,
need y'all, and they
yeah,
know that. And this is a conversation maybe we can have for another time. But that's definitely something I've dabbled in as well. Is looking into creating an organization that would be like an association within the clinical research professional world
yeah,
that would force SOCRA and ACRP and Premier and these other conglomerate CRO training organizations,
yeah,
accreditation bodies who have these grand multi-day, you know what I'm talking
event,
about, like
yeah,
conferences and events and all
mm-hmm.
these merch
Thing,
everywhere that I'm never
yeah,
going to use. It's just on my refrigerator.
Oh, you mean
Um,
IRBs that sell conferences when they're
yeah,
supposed to be ethics committees? Don't get me
yeah,
started on that. Don't get me
right? Like
started
all of
on
that
that.
stuff. They're going to need us,
yes,
because as the field becomes quite diverse and colorful and full of all this different personality and pizzazz, they are going to have to bring us onto the table,
exactly,
make room for us. They're going to have to build a whole other section for us, and that's a great shift for people like us who are in this field and all the different multi levels that we are playing this game. You know what I
yeah,
mean? As a professional, as a potential or prospective participant, like we all are, and as an advocate also for the groups that we are overseeing.
yeah. You know what happened to us our first year, which I was just like, for me, that was this. slap in the face, and I was actually really surprised how early on they were willing to do this. They wanted us to talk about diversity and patient retention, and I don't know what else. Dan, you might remember the organization. I don't know. Say the name if you remember, if you want to say it. But they came to us about a year and a half in, or about a year in, and they're like, "Well, we would love to have you on. We'll pay you because obviously, you guys don't charge your members, and you need to make funds, blah blah blah." But then when we finally got to the point of saying yes, then they released the information to us. We couldn't use any of our logo. We couldn't promote
Mm,
what we were and who we were, and we also had to, I think, have a submission prior in advance. And it's just like you are literally clamping us down based off of funds too, which is even I find it more rude
Well,
because
they
you're
wanted
trying to
us to
pay.
be their mouth, but make it seem like
yeah.
it's their brand. They're basically white labeling us,
Hmm.
Yeah.
like to be that
Yeah.
to be their
I don't know what
brand.
organization this was. Then I don't really
I
remember, but
forgot.
yeah,
It sounds like most of
Yeah.
them, though.
It is. It really is because I mean, a conversation again for another time. But when we were talking about earlier, we got to have the real conversation, or you need to be on game with the what the real conversation is really about, and it's about equity, it's about the racism in the field and all those things. And if it's just going to be awkward and uncomfortable and you're going to white label things and make us the mouthpiece, we have to have the discernment to know the difference between the two. And I'm
100%.
glad y'all, I'm assuming that y'all
Oh,
didn't
Oh
work with
no,
them or anything like that. Yeah.
no,
I don't
And
know.
I have a friend who's been very clear with me in my organization about being mindful in those situations where it's not poaching, but those predatorial situations where you are so excited as a small organization or a budding organization, let me say, and you get your first big one, and then you hear all these stipulations and find yourself in this crossroads tug of
scenario.
war of like, do I go with it because this is an opportunity for the organization I've been working so hard to promote us? Um, does this feel right? No, it's not, but they're going to market it as such. And I think as we continue to collectively push back on things like that, it signals
Like
to,
no.
yeah, stakeholders that like y'all are gonna have to play a different game, and the game is
100%.
going to be like you're saying, you're gonna have to come to our table.
100%. And I
Didn't
think
even
it's
help
also
build it. I'm happy that I built it myself.
mhm.
And now you're just gonna have to come, like you said, like we have open arms. You're
And that's
welcome to have
true
a seat,
equity.
but you gotta
Yeah.
bring your
You
ass
gotta
to this table,
Yeah,
though.
and it's like they want to say, okay, well, we'll put up a photo, headshot of you, we'll put your name, we'll highlight you, and it's like, that's
Well,
great.
that's
You can
true
highlight me as
equity.
an individual, but it's just like that's I
They're
feel
playing the
like
game. They want
yeah,
brand equity. They want their brand
brand to
equity,
be
but us to
elevated,
do the work.
Yeah,
and
They know
and they
yeah,
just
equity. They know equity. We're talking about it, but they know it.
yeah, and then it's just like
yes,
highlighting the
yes.
person's face and making you feel, and that's what I didn't like because I felt, oh, you're new here. We're going to give you this. We're going to give you a platform. We're going to highlight your face. We're going to put it on our social media. We're going to put you on maybe like a podcast, or we'll put you on our article. We'll give you awards or whatever, we'll do XYZ. And it's great. And it's nice because you're like, oh, wow, I'm actually making a space for myself in the industry because that's intentionally it's the idea, right? You want to be there for the people, you want to be there for your growth, right? It's like a full 360, but it's a really hard line to step back and say, okay, what is more important? Is
And they're
it
hoping you think that the money's more important. That's what
yeah,
they're
the
hoping, is
money,
that the accolades, the attention, and for people like you and I who both agree that the older we get, we don't want to be in the forefront. I don't know how much money you're going to pay me to get me to do an interview or something like that. That's not my
mhm.
joy. My joy is actually to push content in the background, to
Yeah,
have the
exactly.
conversations in the DMs with people who are asking me questions about the COVID vaccination, and we're figuring out where they can go get information about that. Like that is where my joy is and where I get off on,
100%.
not the highlighted first page of your newsletter.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things behind it, and I hope that this particular video does circulate. And I, while we were talking and you brought up so many things, I'm getting all these ideas that I think are very important that we eventually speak on and possibly do like little small projects or something together. But um, it's important that, you know, if you're a CRO or somebody from one of these vendors or organizations, like, listen, we're here and we're not taking this BS anymore, right? We're here for change.
Mm-hmm.
If you want access to our organization, our culture, our people, you need to be able to, respect and come at, even pace with us, right?
Yes.
It's not okay at all. And we're barely going to hit 2 years in about, I would say, a week to 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we're finally, Dan can agree, I think all the hard work, the fruits of the labor are finally coming to bloom.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so we obviously, like, I know me and Dad, I know the other co-founders agree too, we extend our hand to you because we know that it's difficult in the beginning. And so anything we can do to connect you to the people that we've made connections with so far and luckily have in the organization, we're going to do everything
Mm-hmm.
we can to connect you to them so we can get you moving in those circles faster.
Thank you.
Yeah, because ultimately it's if organizations are not there, I know Dan said this, like, collaborate, not competition versus competition, right? No competition. This is
Mm-hmm.
about coming up together collectively and making space for everybody because there's more than enough out there to
Yeah.
provide for everybody. And if we come full force together, we're knocking on their door, they eventually have to answer. Like, that's it,
Yes, they do.
So
Yes, they
so
do.
yeah, I'm just like really excited for this. And it's great because it's kind of opening the door for the next year. So we can definitely talk about ways we can possibly, on the back end just for content wise, right? Because I know you have your closed in group for your people, right? Of course. But content on general for people of color, I think that it would be really great if we could do something to show unity and
Absolutely.
yeah.
I know we got to go, but I just had just have one more thing that I want to
Yeah.
say that is just like this burning concept that I share, and it's like it's one I'm fine to give away for free. It's an idea that I've had for a while, or a thought that I've had for a while that I believe could turn into a great recruitment tool of some sort for somebody out there. I think it's going to change the game. My question was a couple of years ago, what would happen if you made all recruitment material non-white? And I think what would happen is because most for the most part, white people are the primary race in this
Okay.
country, just by general majority and privilege. Like they're still going to look at that and know that they can go participate in that study.
Mhm.
But as minorities, we don't feel that way. I don't think, right? And I think that psychologically, you would still get the same amount of white participation and higher minority participation
Yeah.
if you just made all recruitment material non-white.
That's actually very interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
It's
It's
probably
just the idea that
Think
think
tanks,
tanks,
yeah.
getting paid
I
lots.
think it I yes, and that's why I'm okay to give this free one out. Like I will give this one out just for consideration, but I think somebody needs to do something with that because I
Well,
think
we can
I
do it.
Yeah.
This is just the appetizer for future content,
Yeah.
between us, our organizations. We're definitely going to keep having you on, Brittany, on the
Yeah.
LICR platforms.
And
And
we should also have meetings
mhm,
with you separately, like outside of recordings, just like
oh, yeah, just one on
talking
ones.
about things that we can do to promote together at the same time. If we're talking to organizations about certain things, we can talk about how you're in collaboration with us on certain aspects of things so that it gets you into the conversation. Or if we're speaking to organizations, we can do it a two for one kind of thing and bring you in, right?
absolutely.
Like I
Absolutely.
think that
Yeah.
kind of even bulks it in for them and it's probably a great thing as well. So yeah, I mean there's so much here that we can do that we can unwrap, but definitely have a meeting about this eventually before the end of the year. So we can
Yes.
maybe plan a certain approach.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
And like to
I'm
thank you guys for
excited.
Yeah.
watching and listening. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Go check out again Brittany's LinkedIn profile below.
Yes.
Thank
Awesome.
you
Thank
guys. Take
you.
care.
Thanks.